I'm okay with being filmed, and my full name is Tooba Gondal. I was coming from the territory of ISIS in Baghuz.
Started because it was very clear how the media mainstream was portraying women who were joining the Islamic State, and most often they were portrayed as victims, as women that were not capable of making their own decisions, but they were just following the man. And this is one side, and then the other side completely vilifying them. So the idea was actually to try to go back and interview as much as possible to actually show how active women were in the Islamic State, because women were very active. They had specific roles and different roles within the Islamic State, and therefore this was the idea. This was the starting point, especially after the 2019. So when ISIS was defeated militarily in Baghuz, the woman actually tried to play this car victims so much that was becoming really ridiculous. They were appearing in front of camera saying, "I have not done anything. No, I'm just a victim here. I just followed my husband. I didn't know I was here." But this was not really what happened. So yes, from there we started developing the concept of the documentary.
I have completely forgotten that stage of my life. Really, it's.
داعش لفي داري بنكت أما هين هيا يعني هين خلايوي هيا هين فكري هيا إيديولوجياوي هيا جبوي كي يعني هيا نجو خلاص بويا.
Met her first in the beginning of March, no, actually mid-March of 2019, and we met in the Ainisa camp. I was doing interviews and I was trying to understand, how to actually make this documentary. This is not my first documentary in Syria as well, and so I was collecting a lot of interviews to try to find characters that I could be interesting, to bring and to do a much long-term project. So what I did is, as I was walking around Ainisa camp, at a certain point there is this woman started following me and say, "Hey, how's it going? What's up? What are you doing?" And I was like, "Hey, not much. I'm just interviewing people. Do you want to get interviewed?" And she was like, "Yeah, sure. I want to appeal to my government." I was like, "Okay, go ahead then." So she started she did this small interview, really maybe 2-3 minutes, in which she basically appealed to the British government to go back, saying that she has not done anything, that that she has not committed any crimes whatsoever, that she's not a threat for society, and therefore she was asking to be repatriated. And then she told her name, Tooba Gondal. And because I also have a journalistic background, the first thing I did is I Googled Tooba Gondal. And what happened is that what came in front of me was a completely different person that I thought she was, or that she was portraying herself, that she was dubbed as the ISIS Matchmaker. And so from that point, I started researching her a lot. Even she was one of the very few women propagandists that had. She was endorsed by the Islamic State many times, and therefore, I started thinking that maybe she could be a great protagonist for the film, also because of her role as propagandist. And after I understood that she was also, of course, a recruiter, but as any propagandist is also a recruiter, that she also recruited the underage woman. This is what she accused of. But anyway, so after a few months, I was able to go back to have access to the camps, because the initial access was maybe 1 hour for any television, and then after that, I got the access that I needed, and I started shooting this film.
In my mind, it was Muthana Al Britannia, which was the name she used. She was hugely prolific on Twitter.
I wish I never made Twitter in my life.
And clearly also a recruiter.
I'm just speaking openly on Twitter, I never recruited anyone specifically, no. I have no knowledge about this.
My main objective was for the viewers, for the spectators, to actually starting asking them such questions. I think that this was very important as well. And also, how can I give my position? Of course, there are victims. There have been women who have been cheated, and convinced to get into the Islamic State, but not all of them. My intention was to tell another side of the story, and not the side of women's fighting, of the side of the women's and on in charge of the Yazidi trade, women that were actually, being very active in Islamic State and believe very much in this project of the Islamic State. This was my objective, not to give judgments. It's not up to me to judge. And I think that was like the distance that I needed in order to make a film that could explain something, and that I had the privilege in so many ways to study for many years, because I've been starting to go to Syria as a foreign correspondent in 2014. So I've been researching a lot, but still I do not have answers specifically on Tooba specifically, but in general, what is some of them. I think that each story has its individual trajectory. So it's very difficult to have a generalization, are they guilty or not. But I think that women have to take their responsibilities. A lot of women decided consciously to go and live there, regardless of being married or not. The objective, marriage was part of the package, it was part of the deal in order to stay in the Islamic State. The idea was to make the hijra, the holy trip to the caliphate. I think that as if for now I'm done, also because we do not know really what's going to happen to her. She's waiting for trial, and it could take many years before she faces trial, because unfortunately, in France, as we see what happened with the Bataclan attackers, it took them 6 years to go to trial. So I'm not too sure when she will face trial. So I will not tie myself too much into that. So.
There is something she said that annoyed you in a particular way.
I think that I got very upset with her when she talks about the Yazidi girl of 13 years old as in love with a man who was her captors. That I was really annoyed with her for that, because that is not okay.